I think the West has, for decades, if not centuries, been rather arrogant. I think the future is Indian, and I don't say this only because I'm Indian. I'm not trying to be overly diplomatic. I think demography, economy, and history speaks in your favor. The global South is going to decide where we're going to go, and India leads it. Well, it's been wonderful. Doing a state visit is always a big endeavor, I think, for the hosting country, and I've felt very warmly welcome. Been spending 3 hours with Prime Minister Modi, then having the opportunity to speak at Raisina, and having a number of other meetings with your political leaders has been very giving. And for me, it's also a big moment. The last time I was in India was 2013, and just to see the development with your own eyes in terms of infrastructure, in terms of roads, in terms of buildings. Always nice to be back in India. To start off with, it's an honor and privilege to spend 3 hours in the presence of the Prime Minister of India. So we had a very good and engaging, broad-ranging conversation about conflicts around the world, about relations to China, relations to the US, relations to Russia, and relations to Europe, and of course bilateral as well. And the two key conflicts that we focused on was Ukraine and, of course, Iran. On the latter, which you call West Asia, we have seen an escalation that we haven't seen in recent times. Conflicts after the Cold War used to be quite local. Now they have become regional, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or now Iran, and then missiles flying to 12 to 13 countries. So, I gave my assessment of the situation and called for the importance of de-escalation. I briefed the Prime Minister about my conversations with the President of the United Arab Emirates and the Emir of Qatar. I yesterday spoke with the King of Jordan. So the situation is on the knife edge. And of course, we want to stay out of the conflict, but the truth is that there's always an impact, whether it's oil prices, whether it's trade, whether it's maritime. So we were not able to solve it or de-escalate, but hopefully we can move into that direction. But right now, things are not looking good. Yeah, I think India is one of those rare countries that can pretty much speak with everyone, and it is because it has a very pragmatic and realistic foreign policy. It doesn't have any direct and deep alliances, therefore it's quite open. As far as Russia is concerned, all I can do is to explain the threat that Russian aggression imposes on us in Finland because of the war in Ukraine. It is a real security threat, and we discussed that. I actually think that Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine has been a strategic failure for Russia. It wanted to make Ukraine Russian, it became European. It wanted to prevent NATO from enlarging, ended up with Finland and Sweden in. We would not have joined was it not for Russia's attack on Ukraine. And then thirdly, it wanted to demilitarize Europe, and suddenly we're spending 5% of our GDP on defense. So an utter failure. And on top of that, on the battlefield right now, Ukraine is on top. Over 90,000 dead Russian soldiers in 3 months, which is a lot if you think about what happened in Afghanistan during the Soviet era, 10 years, 18,000 dead. So we talked a lot about that. India's role is to help and mediate. I think India has a good relationship with Russia, good relationship with Ukraine, good relationship with the United States. And I'm sure that we'll see a lot of engagement, and already have seen a lot of engagement from India. The same probably goes for the conflict in West Asia. There we have to remember that I think Iran made a strategic mistake with the counterattacks. It's not attacking only American bases or Israeli bases. It's attacking civilian infrastructure in the Gulf, and I think that's dangerous. Well, first of all, I think the future is Indian, and I don't say this only because I'm Indian. I'm not trying to be overly diplomatic. I think demography, economy, and history speaks in your favor. A world order changes ever so often, and they usually last 2 decades, as they did after World War I, 4 decades during the Cold War, and 3 decades after the Cold War. And I think we're now seeing a transition of the world order. I would prefer it to be multilateral, in other words, leaning on international institutions, rules and norms, not multipolar, which for me is a lot of times about pure interests, deals and transactions. Reality is probably going to be somewhere in between. I am happy that the largest democracy in the world, India, is taking the lead. And my argument to my Western friends is that if we want to save multilateralism, we're going to have to give agency, in other words, power, a seat around the table to the countries that matter today. We don't live in a world of 1945, so the institutions should not reflect that either. It should reflect the world of 2026. That's why I have called, for instance, for a seat, a permanent seat in the UN Security Council for India. I wrote a book about it called The Triangle of Power, where I really think that the Global South is going to decide where we're going to go, and India leads it. Finland is a part of the EU, so EU rules are our rules, basically. And that means that the best news that we've had this year, pretty much, is the EU-India Free Trade Agreement, because that will, I think, not only increase trade in goods and services, but also increase labor mobility. So I look forward to welcoming more Indians to Finland, and hopefully India will be looking forward to welcoming more Finns to India. Well, I think terrorism is always a menace. Depends on which part of the world you are in. And of course, actually ever since 9/11 in the US, the West started to focus on terrorism in a different kind of a way. Of course, there was internal terrorism in Europe. We saw that in Spain. We saw it actually in Northern Ireland and many places. But it's a menace everywhere. And when you allow extremists to roam around, terrorism usually breeds. And of course, the attacks on the 26th of November 2008 were horrific, and it was a great honor for me to be able to pay my respects to the victims. Interestingly enough, before I came to India, my son suggested that I should watch Durandar, and I did. And of course, that was one part of the narrative of that movie, and I'm, I guess, happy to fight against terrorism and look forward to the sequel on the 19th of March of the movie.